Have you ever wondered what is the heart of Islam? Beyond the rituals, the prayers, and the outward expressions, what lies at the core of this faith? Today, I'm thrilled to share with you a book that beautifully explores this question, The Heart of Islam, by the beloved Professor Seyyed Hossein Nasr. So hello, I'm Arif Akil, a beginner student of sacred reality, Islamic philosophy, and Gnosticism. If you have no prior knowledge about Islam and are curious about this faith, this book is an absolute gem. And if you're a Muslim looking to reconnect with the essence of your faith, this is one of the first books that I'd recommend. I mean, the title itself is so intriguing. The Heart of Islam. What does that mean? If you ask someone who's casually heard of Islam with only a surface level understanding, they might say, yeah, Islam is a religion, it's followed by Muslims. Muslims pray at mosques, they fast during Ramadan. I've heard they go for pilgrimage at a place called Makkah. They're women, they often wear a headscarf, they wear this thing called the hijab. Yeah, that's what Islam is about. Well, that can be summarized as that is what Muslims do. And that is indeed so. But it still doesn't touch what is the heart of Islam. Is Islam just a set of beliefs, rituals, and rules? Or is there something deeper, something that connects to the very soul of humanity? This is where Professor Nasr takes us on an incredible journey. And as always, one video cannot do justice to this book, especially to the heart of Islam. This video is just an introduction and covers just a few pages of the first chapter of this book. So Nasr begins with the most fundamental concept in Islam, Tawheed, the oneness of God. To quote Nasr, at the heart of Islam stands the reality of God. Now the key word here is reality. It is not a myth, it is not a tradition, it is not simply a belief or blind faith, but rather it is recognizing, waking up to the reality of God. But who is God? He is the one, the absolute that everything else relates to, the infinite. Infinite what? The infinitely good, the all-merciful, the one who is at once transcendent yet immanent, greater that we can all conceive and imagine, yet, as the Quran says, a test closer to us than our jugular vein. To testify to this oneness lies the heart of the credo of Islam, the formula, the expression, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but the God. He is far beyond our reach, yet resides at the center of the heart of the faithful. He punishes the wicked, but also loves his creatures and forgives them. With this understanding of God in Islam, one might naturally wonder about humanity's place within this divine framework. How does Islam view humans? Man is a being who still carries his primordial nature. Now, what is this primordial nature? The primordial nature is this pure, untainted, original state within himself. This primordial nature is a state that is naturally inclined towards God. This means for any external influences like culture, upbringing, social conditioning, before any of that, there is this innate, deep-seated nature within every human that recognizes and seeks the divine. This essence, this primordial nature of man is called the Fitrah. This Fitrah is that innate disposition that is just in harmony with divine reality. Fitrah is this natural state in which humans are created, that's inherently inclined towards truth, goodness, recognition of God.
Now, although man has forgotten that nature, and it now lies buried under layers of negligence and forgetfulness. However, the Quran states that God has created man in the best of stature, axonal Tawheed. So this message of Islam is addressed to that primordial nature, that fitra. It is a call to recollect, to remember
the knowledge that is needed into the very substance of every one of our beings before coming into this world. If the cardinal sin in Christianity is disobedience, in Islam, the fundamental failure is forgetfulness, forgetting where we have come from. And once we forget, as a result, we are enabled to use our intelligence to function in the way God created it as a means to know the One. The very name of the religion, Islam, what does it mean? It comes from this reality for the Arabic word al-Islam, means surrender, and the peace that issues from our surrender to God. Now, what is surrender? True surrender is not just concerning our will. It must involve the whole of our being. As God has given us many faculties, free will, intelligence, our surrender must be complete and total, not limited to just one or two of our faculties. It must involve the whole of our being. If not, our hidden thoughts, emotions, false ideas can mix with this shallow sense of surface level surrender to God. When that happens, people may act in the name of religion, but their actions can lead to disastrous outcomes. Now, a complete total surrender doesn't mean that one is a fatalist or one does not give any effort. Nor does it mean that following divine norms in a purely personal or self-centered way. It has, on the contrary, led to an inward and outward striving that combines with a serenity that characterizes traditional patterns of Islamic life. I mean, this point is so important, perhaps indeed the heart of this video. I'd like to repeat it. The surrender that Islam requires us, as suggests, it leads to a struggle, it leads to a striving, an inward striving and outward striving, as a result of which there is a sense of peace and serenity. This stands in such a sharp contrast to the approach seen in both modernist movements and so-called fundamentalist trends found in the Islamic world today. When we fail to surrender every aspect of ourselves, our thoughts, our emotions, our desires, our intellect, everything, if we fail to do that, we inevitably ascribe power to something other than God. And this, in essence, is shirk. Shirk is the greatest sin in Islam and the only one that God does not forgive. Now, since the one God is the infinite, the absolute, as well as the infinitely good, it is the nature of the good to give up itself. And the infinitely good could not but radiate the reality that now constitutes the world. In fact, all the worlds. Since the one God is infinite and absolute, which includes being infinitely good, being completely good, he naturally shares his goodness. How does he do that? He does so by creating and then sustaining the world and everything in it. So yeah, in simple terms, God's infinite goodness naturally leads to the creation of the world and more. But creation or radiation implies separation. And it is this separation from the source of all goodness that constitutes evil. Evil can be understood as a form of separation from the good. Although evil lacks the fullness of its own reality, yet it exists on its own level, just as real as we encounter in our daily lives. As the good is linked to presence, existence, and life, evil stems from absence of existence, emptiness, void. What do I mean by that? It takes a while to get this concept clear. So think of this example. Think of the sun as a symbol of God's pure goodness. The rays of light streaming from the sun represent creation. Everything that exists comes from this divine source. But as the rays travel further from the sun, they become weaker and more scattered. This fading light symbolizes creation's increasing distance from God's perfect goodness. In this distance, shadows, darkness appear. Not because darkness is a force of its own, it has no force, because it is where the light of the divine is not there anymore. In the same way, evil is not an independent power, but a consequence of turning away from the source of all good. Despite the presence of imperfection and evil, the Quran affirms that God's creation is fundamentally good. Evil exists within the world, but it does not define the world, which at its core is a reflection of divine wisdom and mercy. So, what's the purpose of creation? The deepest purpose of creation is explained by the famous Hadith Qudsi. What's Hadith Qudsi? It's a sacred saying of the Prophet that's not part of the Quran, yet in which God speaks in the first person through the blessed mouth of the Prophet. And he says, I was a hidden treasure. I loved to be known. God wanted to be loved, so I was a hidden treasure and I loved to be known. Therefore, I created the creation so that I would be known. So therefore, what's the purpose of creation? The purpose of creation is rooted in God's love for being known. And how would he be known? That is humanity. Humanity as God's central agent on earth plays this vital role in this divine purpose. In other words, we were created to know, love, and experience God. When a human being recognizes and understands God, as a result of understanding God, they fall in love with God. They fulfill the very reason for their existence. It's not just that. If you remember, this sacred Hadith Qudsi speaks of God being a hidden treasure. Not just a treasure, a hidden treasure. Wouldn't you want to find this hidden treasure? Wouldn't you want to own this hidden treasure? Well, what is this hidden treasure? This hidden treasure is that symbol of truth that lies in everything in the universe and has its origin in divine reality. And everything in the universe is a manifestation of that divine reality. Therefore, everything in the total cosmos that is visible and invisible is a theophany. What is this word theophany? Is a theophany, or it's a manifestation of the divine names, is a manifestation of the divine qualities, is drawn from this hidden treasure of God. If these manifestations are drawn from the hidden treasure of God, the question we have to ask ourselves, not just ask ourselves, the question that should drive us, if everything is a manifestation of the divine, is a manifestation of the divine name drawn from the treasure of the divine, how can I partake from this treasure? Perhaps maybe even be just one with this treasure. Since everything in the universe reflects God's wisdom, in fact, the Quran states that everything in the universe glorifies God, glorifies Him. As the verse goes, there is nothing but that hymns His praise. In fact, the very existence of being itself is nothing but the invocation of God's names. Therefore, it is quite interesting to note, in fact significant to note, that much of the Quran is devoted to the cosmos and the world of nature. The world of nature plays a key, integral role in the traditional life of Muslims. For example, all the Islamic rituals and rites are harmonized with this phenomenon. The earth, God has made the earth the first mosque. Our prayers, the 5 daily prayers, follow the celestial movement of the sun. Before we pray, we purify ourselves with pure water. And our calendar is based on the phases of the moon. In fact, the world of creation is God's first revelation. Before the Torah, before the Gospels, before the Quran and other sacred scriptures were revealed, it was the world of creation. That is why in Islam, the cosmos is seen a book in which the signs of God, the ayat of God, are to be read. So then what is the relationship between humanity, between man and the rest of creation? As it states in the Quran, God taught Adam all the names. And since Adam was taught all the names, which means that God has placed within the human nature and a level of intelligence that is central by which he can know all things. Therefore, it also means that humanity and human beings in ourselves are ourselves a theophany. Again, what's a theophany? Human beings and ourselves are a visible manifestation, a sign of God's names. In case of man, perhaps all of God's names. Therefore, Adam, as a prototype of humanity, is superior to the angels. Why? By virtue of his knowledge of the names of all things. And not just the knowledge, as well as being the theophany, the reflection of all the divine names and qualities. So, where does that leave man? The Quran shares the view of men and women that first, God chose human as being his trustee, his protector, his Khalifa on earth, which means that he has given human beings the power to dominate earth. But on the condition that while being the Khalifa, they remain obedient to God. They remain not just obedient, God's servant, they remain Abdullah. So while man and women are Khalifatullah, as long as they are also, while they're the trustees of God, as long as also they're the servants of God, they're Abdullah. In contrast, who is Iblis? Who is Satan? As for Iblis, Satan, his rebellion comes from pride. In considering his nature, I'm made of fire and superior to that of Adam, who's made of clay. Look at his analogy. I am fire. He uses his intellect, he uses his knowledge that I am fire, Adam clay, therefore I am superior. And he refused to prostrate himself before Adam. Why? Because fire is more noble of an element than earth or clay. And actually clay puts out fire, but that's besides the point. He could not see the effect of the spirit that God had breathed into Adam. Now, if Satan could not see the effect of spirit that God had breathed into Adam, the question we have to ask ourselves that if Satan could not see that, do we fail to see the effect of God's signs in the world and cosmos around us? If we fail to see that, perhaps do we have a little bit of Satan within us? Something to think about. Anyway, Satan was the first to misuse analogy and try to replace soulful understanding, soulful knowledge, soulful intelligence with ordinary surface level logic and reasoning. So it's interesting that his fall was also connected to the domain of knowledge, or more like the lack of total knowledge on his part, which created the lack of total knowledge created a sense of pride, which in Islam as well as Christianity is a source of all other vices. Anyway, to wrap up, dear friends, in conclusion, the heart of Islam goes beyond rituals and rules. It might be said from the Islamic point of view, creation and revelation are inseparable. We come to know the divine through three grand revelations, three incredible books. First, there is the cosmic book, creation itself, full of signs to be read and deciphered. Second, there is the book of the soul, our Fitrah, the deep innate pull within us that is always seeking the divine. And finally, they are the sacred scriptures, which have been sent by God through His mercy to guide humanity. And throughout these ages, which are the keys for reading the other two books, that of the cosmos and that of the soul. These aren't separate paths. They're all connected. The cosmos is outside, the soul is within us, and the scriptures help us understand both. So, don't just read these books, experience them, find God's signs in nature, listen to your soul's whispers, and let the sacred teachings light your path. That was a summary of the first few pages of the first chapter of The Heart of Islam. What an incredible journey. I hope to do another video too on this outstanding book. But till then, till my next video, take care, keep reflecting, keep smiling. Goodbye.